The sun had barely risen over the red clay of Greene County, Alabama, when young Abigail Carter vanished. No footprints in the dirt, no sound but the wind whispering through the oak trees. Only her shawl, damp with dew, lay draped over the fence post. A silent signal that something far older, far darker than the local townsfolk dared whisper had awoken. For decades, whispers had haunted the old Carter plantation, rumors of a woman whose beauty could unhinge minds, whose presence poisoned loyalty, and whose name was erased from every ledger, church record and grave marker. Tonight her legend begins, an exploration into a story no one wanted remembered, a story of seduction, betrayal, and annihilation. Somewhere between myth and history, this woman left a trail of devastation that would haunt Alabama for generations. In 1823, she appeared like a shadow at the edge of the Carter plantation, tall, dark-eyed, a shock of unkempt black hair against her pale skin. She was sold at auction as a slave, yet her demeanor suggested she had never been meant for servitude. Townsfolk recalled the hush that fell over the cotton fields whenever she passed, a quiet terror. She did not speak much, but her eyes seemed to pull secrets from those who dared meet them. Children would hide behind barns, sensing her presence was not human, while men, married, stoic, religious, found themselves unraveling under her gaze. She carried a scent like burnt honey and iron, a trace of the grave mixed with life itself. The Carters were the first to succumb. At first it was subtle. A lingering touch on a shoulder, a whispered suggestion in the parlor, prayers disrupted, small betrayals unnoticed. Within a month, Abigail had planted doubt between husband and wife, pitting father against mother, children against parents. It was said she could weave a dream so vivid that reality itself blurred, twisting even the strongest of wills into fragile, self-destructive patterns. By the season's end, the Carters' home was a mausoleum of mistrust. They whispered her name in fear but could not summon the courage to confront her. The matriarch, once proud and unyielding, died of a sudden fever, and the patriarch, broken, was never seen outside his empty study again. Abigail's influence extended beyond households. Greene County's First Baptist Church, a cornerstone of the community, found itself gripped by paranoia and strange phenomena. Candles flickered even when no drafts existed. Choirs faltered mid-verse, voices cracking as though unseen forces pressed upon their throats. Local preachers whispered of unholy dreams, visions of sin and violence that made them question God himself. She attended services silently, eyes scanning the congregation as though reading the soul of every sinner and saint alike. Soon the church council fractured into factions, accusing one another of corruption, theft, and secret blasphemies. It was as if Abigail carried a contagion of distrust and despair, leaving no sanctuary untouched by her shadow. By 1830, she had been sold again, this time to an orphanage on the outskirts of Montgomery. The children, many abandoned or rescued from destitution, adored her at first, but the smiles faded when Abigail taught them games with rules they did not understand, games where deceit, cruelty, and confession merged into a perverse ritual. Staff reported nightmares of children wandering the halls at night, chanting names of people who did not exist, scratching symbols into walls, their voices trembling like a chorus of crows. When a fire claimed half the orphanage, she was gone, never trapped, never caught. Survivors whispered that the building itself seemed alive, mourning and cursing in the same breath, a vessel of her lingering influence. The Whitfields, wealthy cotton merchants, became her next victims. Their wealth could not shield them from Abigail's manipulations. She inserted herself into the household under the guise of a servant, yet she slowly dominated every interaction. Husbands became obsessed, wives paranoid, children cruel and secretive. Financial ruin followed mysterious absences of crops and livestock, yet no evidence ever pointed directly to her. By winter, a violent quarrel resulted in the eldest daughter's death, a fall from the estate's spiral staircase. Townsfolk murmured about the cursed house, about a woman whose hands were never touched but whose presence inflicted destruction deeper than any weapon. Some said Abigail traveled to a seminary in Tuscaloosa to study theology, though records show no formal enrollment. There she captivated the young seminarians, eliciting confessions of secret sins, planting seeds of forbidden knowledge. Lectures dissolved into debates about morality and power, with students turning on each other, confessing imaginary crimes, sometimes literally harming themselves. Scholars wrote letters of complaint, citing her as a disruption, a threat to the institution, yet each attempt to remove her failed. Her influence seemed to seep into the very wood of the classrooms, as if the seminary itself conspired with her. The Gaines family was the last household to fall under her sway. Unlike the Carters or Whitfields, they were suspicious, alert, and cautious. Abigail relished the challenge. Over months, she dismantled trust piece by piece. Letters went missing, whispered accusations flourished, and family secrets, long buried, emerged with devastating precision. In the end, Mr. Gaines vanished from the estate during a midnight walk, his body never found. Mrs. Gaines descended into madness, speaking to invisible figures, accusing the children of complicity in things unspeakable. Abigail, as always, was gone when the authorities arrived, leaving only the echo of her laughter and the hollow shells of 3 families destroyed. By 1845, Abigail had vanished from official records, yet her legend spread like wildfire through Alabama's back roads. Townsfolk whispered of a dark woman, a siren of ruin whose shadow haunted abandoned homes, ruined churches, and burned orphanages. Mothers warned daughters to avoid strangers with dark eyes and a smile that promised the world, but delivered despair. Minstrels sang ballads in the hollows, tales of her seduction and the unexplainable horrors she left behind. She became less a woman and more a force, a myth interwoven with the cotton fields, the oak trees, and the red clay soil itself. Historians attempting to trace Abigail's path found inconsistencies, impossible timelines, and records erased in ways that suggested more than bureaucratic negligence. There was talk of her being an embodiment of ancient trauma, slavery's unresolved horrors given flesh, a vessel of generational rage and sorrow. Witnesses described her presence as nauseating and intoxicating simultaneously. The air thick with the coppery tang of blood, a hum beneath the earth, a heartbeat echoing somewhere inside the skull. People who encountered her often questioned their own memories, unsure if events were reality or nightmare. Some accounts, mostly oral and scattered, suggested Abigail conducted secret rituals in the dead of night. Candles arranged in strange geometric patterns, whispers in unknown tongues, and sacrificial gestures small and symbolic. Families spoke of dreams where doors opened to impossible landscapes, where ancestors accused the living of betrayal. Scholars debating her existence often dismissed these tales, yet the uniformity of stories, across decades and counties, hinted at a methodical intelligence, one capable of manipulating perception, faith, and morality. Entire towns were not immune. Greene County, then surrounding counties, reported sudden outbreaks of hysteria, fights breaking out in markets, unexplained disappearances, and fires consuming homes without cause. It was as if her presence seeped into the very community structure. Elders spoke of nights when the wind carried whispers, sometimes children calling names, sometimes grown men screaming accusations they could not recall in the morning. Fear of Abigail, or what she represented, was so pervasive that neighbors avoided each other, suspicion replacing fellowship, silence replacing laughter. Historians debated whether Abigail was real or a projection of collective trauma, a dark parable woven from the threads of slavery, power, and repression. Yet physical evidence persisted. Letters, burned homes, records of disappearances, and the eerie consistency of eyewitness accounts. Survivors described her manipulation as a kind of psychic violence, small gestures with disproportionate consequences. People remembered being compelled to reveal their deepest shame, to act against their nature, and to commit acts that left moral scars as permanent as physical ones. Abigail's influence on churches demonstrated an unnerving pattern. Congregations fractured, Ministers abandoned posts, and young parishioners became reckless, convinced of sins they never committed. Sermons imploded into chaos, prayers unanswered and hymnals disrupted by trembling voices. Clergy who attempted to confront her found themselves questioning doctrine, morality, and their own sanity. One account tells of a pastor collapsing mid-sermon, muttering the word "she" repeatedly before vanishing into the night. The power she wielded over faith itself remained unmatched in local memory. Her method was subtle yet devastating. Whispered accusations, uncanny timing, and manipulation of social perception. She turned siblings against one another, parents against children, and even close friends into secret adversaries. Observers likened it to a disease of the mind, a virus transmitted through sight, sound, and presence. Scholars attempting retrospective psychological profiles described Abigail as a living nightmare. Charming, intelligent, observant, and ruthlessly strategic, with an instinctive understanding of human weakness. Few survived encounters unscathed. Those who did recounted episodes in fragmented, disjointed ways. Memories tinged with guilt and terror. Dreams of fires, falling bodies, and unnatural laughter haunted their nights. Some fled the South entirely, seeking anonymity in distant towns. Others remained, yet carried the shadow of Abigail in their families' whispers and the town's folklore. Their stories hint at a woman or force that transcended conventional morality, a specter of retribution and seduction intertwined. By 1850, Abigail's trail grew cold. Some claimed she boarded ships heading north. Others suggested she vanished into the swamps or crossed into Mexico. No death records exist, no graves have been found. Yet wherever she allegedly went, chaos followed. Fires, disappearances, social breakdowns. Alabama's haunted plantations, abandoned orphanages, and broken families became the residual evidence of her influence. A scar on the historical record no amount of reconstruction could erase. Over decades, her name became taboo. Children were warned, "Don't speak her name lest she hear you." Her story passed orally through generations, embroidered with supernatural attributes. People claimed she could appear in multiple places at once, that she could manipulate the weather, and that she left traces of blood and salt where she walked. Scholars who attempted documentation often abandoned the pursuit, citing both ethical unease and unexplainable physical manifestations in archives. Documents smeared, ink bleeding overnight, and photographs darkened mysteriously. Modern interpretations view Abigail as a metaphor for intergenerational trauma. She embodies the consequences of unresolved grief, social corruption, and the human capacity for self-destruction when institutions fail. Yet the terror is undeniable. Artifacts, stories, and destroyed families testify to something more than metaphor. A presence, a historical force of chaos and seduction that transcends conventional understanding. Even today, locals claim that in certain windless nights, a soft laughter drifts from abandoned buildings and long-forgotten pathways. Shadows flicker where none should exist. Some swear the very soil of Alabama remembers her steps, whispers her name, and waits for those who dare tread where she once walked. Abigail's story, whether myth, memory, or manifestation, serves as a warning. Power, desire, and secrecy can corrupt everything they touch, and some forces, once unleashed, cannot be contained.